Hey everyone, it's great to be here today at the Nature Towns and Cities Conference hosted by Natural England and National Trust. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about London's mission to how we can grow more access to green space and help nature flourish across the city. I'm honored to be here to be really closing this inspiring day of innovation, what we've heard throughout the day around how we could, increase collaboration to help essentially create a much more greener and more nature-rich towns and cities. I think what's really come out of today, and if I reflect on my own story about how and why I care about this issue so much, is coming. I'll be totally honest and blunt with you all. I'm not a traditional environmentalist, but I grew to care about this issue coming from one of the most deprived communities in London, partly because I know that having an access to a garden is a luxury for a lot of our residents in our city, and then the impact that has on their mental well-being. If you think about poor air quality and those who've done the least to cause both the air pollution and climate crisis that we live in, are those who are living with some of the most negative impacts of climate change, but also the climate ecological crisis that we face across our city and of course, indeed, globally too. So for me, this is very much an issue of, social justice, racial justice, but also environmental justice for those who've done the least to cause this crisis. And I think that's what's really important about today's conversation, right? It's about thinking about how do we fundamentally, bring about justice to those communities and help, create a London where and cities, for example, where we don't just live to work, but actually essentially we're trying to create cities where people really enjoy to live. Because again, you've got to recognize that most residents across our city don't have one, have very little choice about where they live, or two, have, don't have the financial means to just be like, I've got bad air quality here, or I've got a lack of access to green space, so therefore I'm going to move. Most people are stuck where they are, and it's really important from our perspective as the Deputy Mayor of London. It's really important that my job is thinking about how do we actually green some of the most sort of more densely populated areas, areas with bad air quality, areas that have a lack of access to green space across our city. So we're progressing at real pace from a City Hall perspective. The mayor, since becoming the mayor of London in 2016, has invested in over 600,000 trees that have been planted across our city. But we don't want to just stop there. It's really important to think about how do we also, really accelerate the interlink between both the green and blue spaces as well. We've come out with a pledge to clean London's rivers in the next 10 years. And that's really important because, it's not just about, fundamentally cleaning the waterways, recognizing that London's 41 rivers are currently in bad ecological status, but it's also about how do we think about creating nice footpaths alongside our waterways, thinking about how do we create more access to our waterways and the interlink between the green and blue spaces. How do we, for example, accelerate the delivery of our sustainable urban drainage systems, which is both good in terms of greening some of our more densely populated areas, but also comes with the benefits around flood alleviation and really sort of providing that purpose there too. So, we've got a very, very ambitious plan on how we can move forward around this, but what I also want to be clear is about how do we work with our communities to really accelerate on this mission. Coming from a neighborhood who is coming from an area where seeing Hackney change from what it used to be to what it is now, one of the most deprived, actually ranked as the worst borough to live in out of 434 local authorities in 2006, to now being the place where everyone wants to go live. As a kid, I often felt, like no one asked me what I wanted to see in my area or what role I could have played in shaping that. And even if there were good things done in my community, I didn't feel like I was part of that mission. So part of my job as the Deputy Mayor of London is about making sure that how do we work with Londoners to co-produce, co-design solutions on how we can make sure that we have more access to green spaces across our city. There's incredible organizations, working day in, day out across our city, incredible people who are doing amazing things on what we can do to look at nature-based solutions across our city, new technological innovations across our city on this area. And my job is about thinking about how do we connect the dots, how do we make sure that we increase the collaboration that we've been talking about, but also thinking about the support framework that we could provide from City Hall. And that's why, we will be announcing a new Green Roots funding later this summer, which will essentially be a complete rethink to how we support greening across our city. Traditionally, we had various different pots of funding from the GLA. What we want to do is we want to make it much more easier for community-based organizations to be able to access some of this funding. This funding is going to be there to help support, women-led, youth-led, Black and global majority groups right across our city, but also will help also be informed by some of the work and thinking we've been doing around the local nature recovery strategy, but also the green infrastructure framework that really provide that framework and the sort of the key information data that we need for it to really sort of like make sure that we're not just doing the bare minimum here, but we're actually really thinking about that equity piece. And it's not just about, more and more, more and more green. Of course, we want more of that, but at the same time as well, it's about making sure that we're getting into the right communities, right places, so we can make sure that we get that equity and that social justice that we often sort of talk about. Look, the final thing I will just say is that I think, we as politicians can do so much to an extent. What's really important is that we're working to respond to the needs of those who live across our city. And I think that you've all got a huge role to play in making sure that we're doing much more around greening our city, pushing politicians and demanding that we do more around that equity piece. I think as a wider environmental movement, we're currently seeing, unfortunately, the sort of the I guess like this global movement against, like the sort of the wider net zero sort of movement and all the great progress that we've made. And I think, while it may be seen sometimes that we're fighting against, these big powers, these big fossil fuel industries, those who don't want us to sort of to take action and to reach social justice, I think there's a responsibility for all of us to play our part in making sure that we're going out delivering tangible benefits for Londoners and for people right across our city, because that's the way we're going to win hearts and minds. We're going to win hearts and minds when people start to see the difference in their communities, when families are able to go out and unwind and actually enjoy their space, when people go out and play and kids can go out and play together. When you can go out and access these beautiful green spaces with your friends and actually use your public realm. That's how we're going to win the hearts and minds of Londoners and the public, and how we win the wider sort of call for environmental justice across our globe. So look, thank you so much for taking part. Thank you again to everyone for having me at this event too. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to working with you to help deliver a fairer and greener London.